Anybody here hasn't heard of Romley Stewart? Has not heard of Romley Stewart? Hands up, please. Okay, not too many. That's fantastic. So
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. So we are here at Common Law Assembly in Queensland today, and we are very delighted to have with us, I think, an esteemed guest, man who's got a channel that I stumbled across maybe, I reckon, about 7 or 8 years ago now, and I've tried to absorb a lot of his stuff, and it still goes over my head. But he runs a channel that I saw called Justinian Deception. If anybody doesn't know that channel, please look it up on YouTube, look at some of his stuff. But he is a man who has got worldwide renown. He's responsible for changing laws in this town here.
I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to get worldwide.
He's a bit of a worldwide legend. So everybody here, please put your hands together for Romley Stewart.
Thanks. So, I'm having some technical problems there. There we go. All right. So, Rom, what Rom has told us is that some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is very controversial. Okay. So if you guys, if you don't have notes that you're taking, that's fine. If you do, that's great. Also, we're going to record this and we'll post it on our Telegram page as well, so that you guys will have access to the interview again. So if you need to review any of it, right. So what we've been talking about here in our assembly, Rom, is, I mean, this is a common law assembly. However, we've been exploring a lot of different ways that one of the common law principles is being able to govern ourselves and to get off of the government's dependence. And I think that when we've talked about that principle, that's taken us down a few different paths, whether we've been talking about our food independence or, you know, drinking clean water, even the basics, and our financial independence, things like that, breaking away from the big corporate system that's in place. Now, I've kind of come across your strategy, like I said, a little over a year ago, maybe almost 2 years ago now, and at first I was thinking to myself, man, this guy, he's kind of dangerous to them, you know, to them. And I understood a little bit more about what you were saying.
That comes back to, I'm dangerous to them, and then I also get that back.
Yeah.
So I've been in, I've spent many nights in a cell in the local watch house here. I've never been in prison or anything before. I've always been a good, clean citizen, and I believed that that's the way you got to be, a nice citizen, nice good boy. I lived the whole life up till I was 50, and as soon as I started questioning that, it's the first time I saw the inside of a cell, and got the thumping. I felt all the blows of the corporate government. So yes, it's a danger that's been going both ways. Sometimes I feel that over the last 10 years, there's been such a swell of people starting to look and saying, well, maybe this system is not what we've been told, and some people are starting to question it a little bit deeper. And I think that in some ways, even the police now, some of the police have even left. I've got 2 prosecutors that left. The last one on the last big case in 2016 had never seen a thing called a certificate of birth, which is the entering into the system. We're entered into the system, and then we're deceived into the system. There's 2 things: name and surname. There's 2 certificates, 2 bonds or 2 certificates that exist. The first one, we come in, and then they corrupt us into the second. So sorry, I was just going to say that Kevin, I don't know his second name, but in that court case, after it, he left the Queensland Police. And I saw him 6 months after the court case. I walked out with nothing wrong. Thank God that the magistrate knew what was going on. And Kevin came up to me and put his arms around me in a Woolworths, I think it was, in town. And he was almost in tears, and he said, look, Rom, I'm just so sorry that I was involved in that court case, trying to put me in prison for 10 years for being a domestic terrorist. And all because of the stuff that more so than was on a Facebook called Romley Stewart. And even though at the end of that, well, I was going to say that Kevin left the prosecutions, and now he supports or works for the Indigenous people up in Torres Strait. And he said, I feel a lot better, but he was so sorry. He was involved in that court case, and what stopped it was the fact that he didn't know what a certificate of birth was. And here he was, you know, like a lawyer and everything like that. And when that cropped up in the court, the magistrate, Mr. Comans, a lovely man, stopped the court case and said, Rom, I've got to have a recess. So I said, yeah, no worries. So he said, we went over for an early lunch. He even advised us to go to a cafe to go. He must have owned shares in it. So we went and had some lunch and came back. And then when we got back, Kevin, the prosecutor, I sat next to him. He was lovely too. And he said, Ron, do you know what's going on here? And I said, yes, Kevin, I've got an idea that you and the magistrate and I are going to hide something from the police and the population in large. And he said to me, will you play this out with us? I said, yes, I will. And that's what happened. So we played through the rest of the court case. I did my thing, and the magistrate did his thing. And at the end of it all, I think there was 7 charges of firearms, domestic terrorists, you name it. I was the most wanted criminal. This is the most wanted criminal, as they said, in Australia. And I wasn't. I mean, I was just publishing stuff.
Just to give some context, so there's a few little things I want to point out, is that this whole common law system, we're still testing it out. It's not clean cut. And this is why we need leaders like Rom, who are actually leading the way, and at significant detriment to their own health and their own safety. So we're not sitting here saying that this is a clear cut, this is how you can do things. We're all trying to lead the way forward. That's the first thing. The second thing, just to maybe get some more context, you mentioned, and I don't know this part of the story, so I'm kind of intrigued just to give that lead up. At 50, what happened when you were 50 for you to go, hang on, something's wrong here? I'm guessing maybe some kind of fines or some injustice. What led you on the journey?
I went to art. I was well, I still am. I love painting and drawing. So I went to art college when I was 16, I think it was, just after junior. And something strange happened to me because I went through 2 years of applied art, which was painting and drawing. Love that. And I should have brought a painting over to show you what it was. But it's I love landscape painting. But I wound up working in the t-shirt factory as a t-shirt artist, doing all of that. And that's what I spent most of my time. But at college, we had this old retired advertising agency guru that used to do all the Pan Am, that's another story, but the old Ansett and ANA, which were the old airlines back then, and he used to illustrate, you know, the air hostess standing at the door of the aeroplane and saying how wonderful these airlines and how safe they were. But he used to do all the illustrations. And he said one day to me, he said, we deal in graphics. And I said, oh yeah, but I can read the graphics. And he said, the graphics is a presumption, you can't read it. We only deal in graphics. And I said, but I can read it. And he said, you presume you can read it. Now this guy, by that time, I don't know how he still had a job at like 70 or 75, but he was in there, and he obviously had an incredible background in advertising in the 50s and probably in the 40s and the 50s, doing all these illustrations because the camera work didn't exist to the extent we use today. So everything was hand done, and these illustrations were done this big and then reduced down into the size of the paper ads. So, but that was the first thing that I said, this guy's a lunatic. why can't you read? I can read that ad. It says how great Pan Am or whatever it is. Pan Am's gone. It got bankrupted after the Pan Am disaster. And that actually is significant for some of my research today as well. But when I thought you can't read it, then I said to him, well, why? And he said it deals with liability. Then so in other words, what we're doing in advertising is it's called a glossary, where we're telling people a whole load of bullshit. That's what advertising is about. And I spent the last year of art school as in the commercial field, learning how to deceive and make people feel good with the golden rules. Even these ads that we see along here, with all the right balancing and everything, you can make people either be sucked into the piece of artwork or not look at it. You can look away if it's not balanced, and if it's balanced correctly with all these golden rules, we used to call it, it made people feel warm and fuzzy and feeling inside, and then they would be captured by this piece of artwork. Well, that was the beginning of finding out that we were dealing with something that was not English. And when he said, you cannot read it, it's a presumption. And now I was only 17, probably 17, barely 18 when that happened. So I didn't understand all of this. But these were the little triggers that clicked off in my head. And then when we started to, we use styles manuals for English. We use styles manuals for Latin. And a styles manual is how do you read and write the English language? And there's a way to do it. And if you don't know it properly, then you're assuming something that's not right. But in the art world, we were using a thing called the Sarah Whitty Manual of Satire. Sarah Whitty Manual of Satire. And what that is it's how to form illustrative cartoons. It was mainly to do with cartoons, but advertising, but again, to keep the whole lot as illustrative and as a picture form. And in that system, it's like if you look at a Donald Duck comic, you can see that the pictures, they move from the left to the right. There's a format on reading a Mickey Mouse comic. And remember, I don't know about you, but we didn't have internet when I was, I'm 67. So back then, we didn't have the comics was to race down and buy the comics. And of course, we were being indoctrinated, conditioned and indoctrinated that what we're seeing in the comics was all English. But it wasn't. It was operating under this hidden system. It's not hidden, but something that we didn't know about, which is called the Sarah Whitty Manual of Styles. So my art training at college, and then later on, these are the things that started to spark me into going. Then I noticed it was on a court document, driver licenses, bank cards, banking deals. Then if you even get your home mortgage out and read your mortgage, the contract part of it is written in all uppercase text. And it's missing, like when you write the cat sat on the mat in English, the first letter of the cat is a capital C, and then the cat sat on the mat, just like we learned at grade 1 and grade 2 at school. But in a banking contract, you see these ads here, these children's ads, what they are on the bottom. If you look at the bottom here, just this green one, it'll say, this is the presumption. Listen to your leaders. Well, that doesn't say listen to your leaders. That does not read that. And there's no English, what do they call a grammarian, or the people that know their English grammar, they will look at that and go, no, that does not read, listen to your leaders. And this is the sort of thing that I was trained to deceive the people. I didn't know back then. It took till I was 50 to start to question what was going on with driver licenses, court documents and everything. So everyone in this whole assembly hill room, you will read that and you will say that reads, listen to your leaders. And if I tell you that does not read that, you will think I'm nuts. And that's it. That's how I've become nuts all this time. Everyone. But finally, some people are going, maybe the guy's not nuts. I even questioned myself. But I did bring something. I'll drag it out. Hang on. Now, if you've seen the Justinian deception videos, this was the key book called, and this is the new, the US Federal Reserve that basically owns all of our governments. Because all of our governments are registered with the US SEC. I think most people know that here. Yep. So they're registered as corporations. I think it's owned basically by BlackRock now. I think most of us are aware of that. And these companies, I forget the date, but the Oxford Styles Manual, and this is a fair while ago, was changed and Oxford gave it to the Chicago Manual of Styles. And this is the Styles book that
dictates. So you're saying that this is the manual that tells us how English language is formally supposed to be written.
And this is correct. And they do this to make sure the federal government, the US Federal Reserve and their corporate governments make sure that they do not follow this book. Right. Because, it's all out for everyone to look. So when you fall into these traps of these corporate governments, they say it's your own fault. They say you didn't read the Bible, you didn't read, I think, Article 126 in Genesis, where money comes from, which is dominion, which means authority. And you also didn't read this book, even though I think in some cases it's up to $200 or $300 for the book, so you don't race out and buy it in a hurry. But just to prove something really odd and strange, and to see that this has got nothing to do with common law or anything, this is a satanic deception. Yeah, it's evilish. I don't want to say it's totally evil, but it's evilish. So, and here we go. We'll go to page 666. 666. Are we ready for it? I can't see. Yeah, I got my. Yeah, can you? I got. Okay. Is it?
Yep. Is that what you were looking for?
Page 666 was the key to cracking the code to this deception. And this is the book where it is. And it's odd that it's in page 666. And the first 3 lines basically says, you could probably read it out for me.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what it means. It means that 2 languages on one document don't have jurisdiction with each other. And every court document and every banking contract, anything to do with government, puts 2 languages on it. It puts English, and it also uses this sign language that on page 665 over there. Can you read?
Yeah. So it says the sign for, quote, a car drove by, end quote, is written as, all capital letters, vehicle, hyphen, drive, hyphen, by.
So when you're dealing with a Latin language, when you're dealing with Latin, because what they've done is they've usurped a thing, it's like a Latin language and the English language onto banking documents, driver licenses, anything, even charges that you're winding up with in court. So they've usurped 2 languages into the document, which straight away destroys the document. Because if you get one of these, a banking document, and if you realise that there's 2 languages on there and separate them, the banking document will mean absolutely nothing. You need the 2 languages on that to say, wow, this is.
That's what this means.
But when you take it and you split it, now this is the book that says you can't do that. So this is the book that just says that banking documents are all corrupt. But if you believe it, if you believe that, you know, you're in. Come in, spinner. And the other thing, you'll notice that even on a banking document, everywhere you sign, the bank will put a cross on there and say, sign here. Well, they just signed it. They just signed it. You go, no, you signed it. And boy, well, you know, they'll shit themselves without saying that.
So I'm going to read this for you, just so you know what it says, actually.
The first 3 lines.
Yep.
Yeah.
It says, this is the following from what I just read. One obvious limitation of the use of glosses.
Which are those?
Which is those right there. From the spoken/written language to represent signs is that there is no one-to-one correspondence between the words or signs in any 2 languages. There is no one-to-one correspondence between those words and signs.
That took me 10 years to find that stupid book. 10 years just to and when I found that. Now, some of you might remember a girl called Gail Kelly, and she was the CEO of Westpac, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. When I wrote an email to her and asked her, I said, your banking documents seem to be wrong. And she said, well, don't you, and I didn't know, because when I sent an email to the Westpac Bank asking this question, a girl just called back, and I didn't know, but her name was Gail Kelly, and I didn't realise it was the CEO of Westpac Bank. Do you want me to stop? Are you right?
No, you're right.
And but at that time, the girl said, don't you believe the banking contract or the housing contract for a loan is legitimate? And I said, well, I've got the evidence that it's not. I've got the evidence that it's basically a fraud. But I said, it's not up to me to say that. I didn't want to make that claim. I said, the reason why I'm writing to you is to ask you. You tell me in relation to page 666 of the Chicago Manual of Styles, and in relation to the debased Latin used, which is listen to your leaders without the hyphen in between that to join that together as Latin. So that's called debased Latin, or legally called dog Latin. Dog Latin. So they've not only put Latin and English into this, they've incorporated a debased Latin onto their documents. So it was really simple. I just said to Gail Kelly, it's not up to me to make any claim. I don't want to make any claim. But I said, you work for the bank. You're head of the legal department, as I assumed. I didn't know she was the CEO of Westpac. But I said, I'll give you 14 days and you can respond and you tell me if it's a fraud. Well, I think within 30 minutes, I didn't have a credit card left. My bank account is gone, and my mortgage is gone. And Gail Kelly did not respond. But the next night, I was sitting there and watching television, and the CEO of Westpac came on, and she said on the television when I used to watch television, and she had resigned and forfeited something like $30 million of another 4 or 5 year of a contract, because they get paid millions of dollars. And it was just through personal reasons. She quit the next day, and no one responded to the questions about is the banking contract a fraud.
Right.
And just one more thing. When I did some research, if you put Gail Kelly into Wikipedia, you will find out the date she left. She got my letter 1 day before that. And when I found out where she worked prior to being the CEO of Westpac Bank, she was a Latin teacher in South Africa. So she knew darn well, of course they've got to know this, if they're a CEO of a bank or a corporation, they have to, you wouldn't get to CEO if you didn't know this stuff. So Gail Kelly just went, bang, I'm CEO, I'm out of here, I'm not answering that question. So what I did,
just to fill in a couple of steps, how did you get onto the fact that this book carried so much weight in relation to the journey you went on? I missed that little step there.
This book is the official styles manual used by the US Federal Reserve, and the US Federal Reserve is the Rothschild private banking system that owns all the banks in Australia.
And to pull that back, how did you find that out? Most people don't even realise the Federal Reserve is a private, family-owned business. They think the government's on it.
Yeah.
What started that journey off for you to actually even inquire that this existed and to look at it?
Well, that's why it's been so long.
Yeah.
But what happens is when you're on a thread, I guess you could say, that just one thing slowly led to another. And the money trail wound up with the US Fed, but really I'll cut it real short. To the money trail, it goes to the Vatican, and if you put the word Jew in the Black's Law Dictionary, the Jew is. I thought the Jews were those guys banging their head on the wall in Jerusalem. I thought that's the Jew. That's what we're led to believe. But in the Black's Law Dictionary, the Jew is the banker. It says Jew is a banker. So the banker, you go, well, who's the banker? It's the Vatican. And why is the Vatican the banker, and where do they get the money from? Well, when you're born in a hospital, the first thing they do is rip you out the back and get your soul print, and put on a piece of paper. And then that goes on the back of a thing called the certificate of birth. So when they say the Vatican is robbing your souls, they're literally robbing your souls. And what they do is they give you a warm, fuzzy soul in return. And the warm, fuzzy soul is the spirit. You get that nice soul, I've got this spirit. Well, that's dead. It says a spirit is dead. So they've traded your living soul from your heel print, and the minute you change from your certificate of birth and apply for a state birth certificate, then you become dead, legally dead. Even if you put in the Interpretations Act for the government and put in child and birth means stillborn. Child and birth means stillborn, and stillborn means not moving, meaning you're dead. So the big Moloch, and this is another side of me that people go, oh, you're off the, you're out there, man. Moloch sacrifices the children. That's how it's been going for years. They sacrifice the children, and we do hear a lot about that sacrifice stuff. But we've got to be careful that sometimes that is not pushing our heads. Oh, look at the sacrifice of the children. When every one of you that's got a state birth certificate have been sacrificed, and you are dead. You're legally dead. And when you buy a home, you only hold the legal title of it. The legal title is a dead title, and it's not a living soul title. It's not the equitable title. You're dead. And it's not a nice thing to say, oh, you're all dead. But that's how the sacrifice of this Moloch or this satanic system is actually working. It's sacrificed everyone that holds a thing called citizenship, as I've said before. City is the, if you look at the normal dictionary on your phone, get it out, put city in there to see what it is. And it says in the bottom, you've got to press the arrow and get the extended version. City is an abbreviation of City of London. And the City of London started in 47 AD. Is it? Oh, you were. It was around 47 or 40, around that. It was only a few years AD after that, Nimrod, whatever his name was. And it was the Roman administrative section of England. It was never England. It was always the Vatican. And it is still that today. So the City of London is the one, I think it's 2 square miles, but they call it the one, is that right? 1 square mile of London. And that's the administrative part of actually the whole world. So anyone that becomes a citizen, city is an abbreviation of the City of London, and the Zen part is a word that means to take upon oneself and, believe, the Zen stuff, But it also says to go against the scripture. So when you become a citizen, you have become an antichrist, the member of the antichrist. And the antichrist is the Vatican and the 1 square mile, and it controls all the corporations and everything from those, the Vatican, and then of course the back in. Yeah.
Can I ask you another question, Ron?
It's weird stuff, and it's stuff that I don't like to say it. I haven't said it for the last year because it's just awful, and I don't like telling people, this satanic side of thing. But sometimes you just have to know your enemy, and if your enemy is Satan, you've just got to figure him out, or whatever it is. And there's a lot of evil people, and it's also been going for many years, like thousands of years. The Order of the Eastern Star, which is it's the woman's side of the Masonic system. The Order of the Eastern Star is, I think, about 8 light years from, I think it's the next system out. So according to them, I don't believe all this stuff, but according to them, this control system that we've got is from a solar system 8 light years from here, and it's been imported into this planet. Now, that stuff, I go, well, I'm not going down that path. But according to the Masonic system, this weird, crazy system that doesn't make sense at first, but it does make sense, and that's according to them, that's where it came from. But they're probably just trying to blame. We got it from over. We didn't do it. We're not evil. It was them over there.
So it's one of those things that.
Now, I want to bring this back a little bit to this concept of our birth dates. There's a lot of shipping terms that get used when they're talking about us, and the concept of a trust. Okay. Now, I've spoken to you before a little bit about this, but a trust is actually coming from a naval or a shipping type of concept. And first, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Now, trusts. The world government, you've probably heard this. We've got the New World Order, but I have a feeling that the New World Order started in. Sorry, I'm out of the camera now. I want to go hang with the. Hang. It's called the Unum Sanctum.
Yes.
And who's that? There's a guy that I can't remember his name, but I'll think of it. It was one of the first trusts set up in 1302, and I think 1302 is the beginning of the New World Order.
Written this down because we've talked
Now,
about it before.
yeah, and a trust is the way I explain a trust is if you get onto a ship on a P&O cruise line, probably a few have been on a cruise line, and when you get onto a ship, you go on as the passenger, and on that deck there are 3 jurisdictions on the one deck. You've got the passenger, you've got the crew, and you've got the captain, the magistrate, which is a captain, and he's the administrator. Yeah. So that is, and the trust is the ship. And before you get onto the ship, you got to really check, is the ship safe? And all ships, when you get onto a ship, on a passenger liner, have got a Bill of Right or a Constitution. So when you get onto that ship, you read the Constitution to make sure it's safe. They're going to take you home if they want to let you off or whatever. But what's happened with us, and when we are born into this ship, But because our pair that rents, the parents, the pair that rents, because they were on the ship, like the parents, the mother and father before, and when they became a parent, they are no longer a mother or father. What they were was just simply a member of the crewman side of that ship. So when they had a child, the ship got the child and brought the child over into the crew side of the ship and not the passenger side. So people that are born into sin are actually born into the crewman side of the ship or the citizen side of a corporation. And ships and corporations are the same thing, but a ship has a body, the corporation only has the manifestation or the paperwork of the ship in the cabinet. So a corporation, when you go through the cabinet, has all the same setup as shipping. And these things are called trusts, because when you go to the sea and you get in that ship, if you fall over or the ship sinks, you're stuffed, you're drowned. And that's why they call shipping trust law, because you got to trust the ship.
There we go. So when we're talking about, we know that a lot of maritime law is being practiced here on land,
Yes.
which essentially is inland piracy. Sorry. But maritime law is trust law.
It's trust law.
That's so, and that comes from the fact that if you were to board a ship, you need to trust that it's actually seaworthy, that the captain and the crew have your interest at heart at getting you to your destination. They're going to take care of you when you get on there before you board, and that you're entering into a trust agreement, right?
Yes. That's why when if you search, I mean, we all have a state birth certificate. If you go in and give your name and you give your surname, because they'll say name and surname. There's two names there, name and, because that's what and means, one and another.
Yes.
So they'll say, we need your name and date of birth. So so here's my name and my surname, because you've joined it together. You've incorporated your true Christian name with the fake government-owned surname. That's what you all did. And then you want the date of birth. And the word born derives from birth. This is the normal dictionary. Put in born and it says derives from a birth. But we have two births. We have the birth of the surname on the day that we left the womb, and then about a week or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks after, they set up the Christian name, and that's the other birth. So when you're walking onto a ship, you've got a berth, which is in the cabin. You choose to be on the passenger side berth, in the bunk of that. Or if you want to go over and do some work as a crew member, you'll go over that side of the ship, over the starboard side of the ship, and they'll give you a berth there, a bunk as a crew. The crew can't sleep where the passengers sleep. The passengers can't sleep where the crew sit. But because we were all born on that ship, we get given a berth, which is B-I-R-T, not a B-E-R-T-H. B-E-R-T-H is real, and B-I-R-T-H, did I say that? B-I-R, yeah, is a fiction. So we wind up in the berth of the crew. We have two berths, we have two cabins. And the other berth is, you can find that berth by giving just your Christian name only and the date of birth, when that was birthed into the registry, which is the date of registration.
Right. So that's now I've paused here real quick. Now
I've got a choice. That's your choice.
So I've shown you guys these two documents of mine in the previous meetings that we've had. And we noticed that there were two different ones. And in fact, we can plug on our laptop over there and we'll pull up those two different documents. Hang on one second.
So just to reflect on a couple of things that Ron was saying before, whether things are actually genuinely satanic or not, it doesn't matter. They believe in it. So it does have relevance and it does have merit for us.
But it's really, if you are a debtor or a citizen, you are a debtor of the corporate government, and debtors have to pay the debt. And you got into being a debtor because you chose to be a beneficiary of the government. And being a beneficiary, you might need a pension, or you might need a job, or even you might register your business to the corporation. And when you do that, you get the benefit out of it. But to become a beneficiary, you have to choose their name. You cannot get a bank account or be a benefit or a beneficiary or get any or the pension from the government without supplying a surname. You try and do it with a Christian name. You can't do it. Because the Christian name is the benefactor of the trust. This is a thing called the certificate of birth. Now that's a birth certificate. And here it's now it says here cross is a cross. Cross means dead. That's why you find crosses in the cemetery. So what it's saying in sign language, it's an amazing little document. It says cross Christian. So what it's saying is dead Christian. Name of child, Romley Stewart. And that's no surname. I don't carry the surname. I haven't done it for the last 10 or since at least 10 years. So I go by this. This is the document that the prosecutor had no idea existed when he saw it in the court. And when that came up, the whole court stopped. And what they'd realised is that I was the benefactor of the trust. And what I did in that court case, I went in there, I just said, no, I'll plead guilty to everything, but here's my bill for acting as the debtor or for holding the surname. Because no one has a surname. A surname is something that you've chosen, you've been given, and even on your certificate of birth, the surname will be written in all uppercase text or Latin, and if it's not written in that, it will be italic, which means symbolised, or underlined, which means symbolised or italic. So they do everything to make sure that your surname is not written in English by underlining it, italicing it, or symbolising it in all uppercase text. So what they've done is they haven't written your surname in English, so it's only through people's ignorance that you've accepted this surname. But in the real document, this is the first one, there is no surname. And even on the certificate of birth, it's written in such a way that it will, like we learned at school or taught at art college, how to deceive people. Well, I didn't know then. They used all the languages of the Sarah Whitty manual of satire to do these birthing certificates. Now there's another interesting thing on the state birth certificate. The sign, I won't say word because any word written in all uppercase text is not a word, it's a sign or a word mark. So on the state birth certificate, the birth, the sign birth or the word birth, but it's a sign, is written with all the letters together, which means dead entity. But on this one, this Christian birth, it still says birth, but the word birth and the word child has been gapped one space so that they can never be liable. But what it's saying is that it's not saying child and it's not saying birth. So all these little tricks and everything that we've been faced with, and it's everywhere, underlining the whole document. It's been made so it's fictitious. So we are all in a system where we believe that there's common law and all these rights and everything. But what's happened is for the last 800 years, we've been just totally deceived and bamboozled and pushed down a path where it's almost impossible to get out unless you just simply drop the surname and go back to your Christian name. But the whole society that we've got, it depends on the surname and in this satanic system that we are all now become beneficiaries of a total crime and a total fraud. But what are we going to do? The whole world is a part of this, and that's why I shut up. Because what I'm going to say is they're all wrong. You know, you got to do this, and then what are we going to all starve to death or destroy the economy or do this? So this crime has started so far back and then got to this point now. But we're in danger at the moment because Third World War is done and dusted. It's been done. Because in 1953, more stuff that we found out with lockstep and all this stuff, but I think it was silent weapons, but there's another document I read. The Third World War was going to be a quiet war, a war that was quiet, silent weapons for quiet wars. So that means the Third World War will be conducted before we even ever wake up to the fact that it's been done. And another thing that I went quiet is because I was a big I wasn't an anti-vaxxer, but I knew that this was the vaccine was a Third World War, and it was good. But a lot of my friends that I tried to warn, I realised how much of a fool they really thought I was, but most of them now are becoming sick, and it's like 7 of them have got cancer and prostate cancer for the guys. And it's so the warning, and even my other mate, he said to me, George, he said, Rom, I think you might be right, because he's got prostate, his brother's just got prostate 3 months after he got the third jab or one of these things. And I said, this is the Third World War, it's underway. And it was planned out because they didn't think they could get the population to fight each other and kill each other, because we don't want to kill each other. But they did it in First World War, they did it in Second World War, they did it with the AIDS virus, that was the most effective. They killed more people in AIDS in World War I and World War II. That's right. And these are all patented, whatever, they're viruses, whatever they are, but they're patented things. And I mean, that's one side of it. But the satanic side of this is they need you dead before you work out that you were always the creditor. While you're the debtor in this system, you don't realise, you haven't worked out that the minute you become the creditor, so many trillions of dollars of debt that's owed on the world stock exchange, whatever it is, it's owed to somebody. What is it now? Some $70 trillion or something. And I say to people, ask yourself, who do these bankers owe it to? Well, they owe it to your Christian name. They took it from your Christian name because it's the creditor, and they gave it to your surnames. And then when you paid it back to the administrator, like on the ship, you paid it back to the captain, which is the administrator or the magistrates. It's really the Vatican. They are supposed to pay that back to the Christian name. But while you're not there, while you're still sitting over in the surname, which the Christian name has a different name and a different date of birth, and when they say to you, well, what's your name? You said, oh, my name's surname and the date of birth when I left the womb. But that's not the real name, and that's not the real name and not the real date of birth. So when you return to this, the 70 trillion that's owed is owed back to you and me. But I've been having difficulty getting mine. and that's because no one was meant to work it out. And I think this is what's his name? Edward Mandell House. Yep, with Woodrow Wilson. I think they had a bit of a fallout after this. And he said, not one man in a million will work this out. And if one man does work it out, they will, ridicule. No, they just make a fool of him. And you know, this I have felt this. I've felt it, but I've become so used to being a fool. It's kind of cool. And you know, it's you know what I mean. It's not. Oh well, if I'm a fool, I'm a fool. But I didn't take the vax because I knew that was going on. And in a courtroom, the way to handle the court is go, yeah, would you like me to act as the debtor? Would you like me to hold the surname? Because when you take this into court, this is what the magistrate did when he saw this. He said, no, that can't be in here. And I said, it's too late, Mr. Comans. I said, it's too late because the prosecutor was holding the certificate of birth. The prosecutor was holding the state birth certificate with all the debt on it, and I was holding the certificate of live birth. So what he had in the room, in the one courtroom, he had the evidence of the debtor and the creditor. He had a problem. He's going, oh, what about? Oh. And this wasn't on that side, and that wasn't on my side. That was held by the prosecutor. And the prosecutor, when he looked, he said, "What's this? What's this?" I said, "This is the real birth certificate." I said, "I think you're holding the debt. That's the debt." And I said, "Someone must have applied for that." And he said, at that point, he did this to the other one. He went like this. Ah! He knew he was holding the debt. And then he said, "He did it, Your Honour, he did it. He's the one that applied for it." And he pointed over at the head of CIB. That was the one that brought all these charges against me to try and stop me from publishing this stuff on the net. And that's when the court case was just shut down for a recess because the debtor and the creditor was in. But I was saying that to Mr. Comans, the magistrate. I said, I said, "Is it burning your eyes, Mr. Comans?" Because I was prepared. I said, "No, I'll act as a debtor. Do you want me to take the surname? Because I don't have one on here. I don't have a surname. No one has a surname, but do you want me to take it? I'll do it, but it's going to cost you." I think it came to some ridiculous amount of money, but it was still, I charged, I think it was wound up at $7.5 million. I said, "You give me the $7 million and I'll plead guilty. And you can do whatever you want." I said, "I'm not going in, I would not plead not guilty, because a not guilty plea creates in the trust law and in military law, which are trust and shipping, if you plead not guilty, you become the belligerent of the state. The minute you become the belligerent, you are deemed the enemy of the state. So any person pleads not guilty becomes the enemy of the state, and you will pay the court cases and everything." But I said, "Oh no, I don't want to plead not guilty. That would make me the enemy of the state. So I'll plead guilty, but I will charge you $7 million. So how about that?" And they said no. They didn't want to do it. And you know why? You know why it is? You know why I did that? Because the government's not a government. It's a company. It's a corporation. It's not there. It's the government has been, someone stole it. It's not there. And the sad bit about tonight is just that I didn't want to come over and wreck the common law, the effort that people are making to get involved in common law, because common law is the real thing. But we are just not. While you hold these surnames and while you are a beneficiary of that corporation that is foreign to this land here, they assume that you've accepted it. So the hardest part is, well, what do we? We've got to drop all of that. Yet it's paying our pensions. It's paying all this sort of stuff. And the reason why they want that type of government is because it's tyranny. You are charged with, when they charge you, you've been charged without a trial. In a normal common law court, you can't be charged. You've got to be accused, and before the charging. But in this, they just send you the charge. There's a charge, and because you're in the military, that's what you are. A citizen is a military account. And when you're in the military, you have to do what you're told. So they charge you, you've got to pay the debt, and you've got to pay. And if you say no, you become a belligerent of the state, because you agreed by accepting the surname and by becoming a citizen, which is an antichrist. You've joined it, and that's where the consent for these governments have come.
So it comes when you accept that surname, you're accepting the fraud, and
all that comes with her.
comes with it. That's right. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So sorry.
That's a lot to digest. You guys keep
and I want to say sorry for this. I want to say sorry, and we've all